Hey, everybody. On the Run with Beards and Dunn, back for another episode. Beards, where the heck are you?
Don, I'm out in Bone Steel, South Dakota.
I can imagine that there's some fishing involved in
There
this.
is. So, of course, on, I think Friday, it's whenever the 11th
It's
of
Wednesday.
of
the 11th.
November. It's Veterans
Saturday.
Day,
Yeah.
and my son Andy is he took his life 8 years ago after he got back from the Iraqi War and suffered from PTSD. So he's out here buried next to his grandma and grandpa in Bone Steel, South Dakota. For those of you who don't know where that is, it's 150 miles southwest of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And if I'm standing in Main Street, Bone Steel, and the wind is blowing out of the north, and I spit, it'll land in Nebraska.
Yeah, you can't get much closer. It's a river there.
Yeah, so the Missouri River there is, and it's an impoundment, Lake Francis case. So I'm out here with some, I'll be meeting some friends the next few days, and we're going to do some walleye and smallmouth bass fishing. Back home in Bemidji, the lakes are starting to freeze up already up there, Dunny.
Oh, that's crazy. We've been just having gorgeous weather here in North Carolina. It's been like 75 to 80 for about 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
It's sunny days. It's kind of like, ideal. And we're just loving it.
Are you getting out there and doing some biking with you and Karen?
Every day. Now that I'm retired, my countdown timer on my phone, you can set countdown timers. It's an app. You put it on your phone. And so every day, when I'd be at work, people go, "Hey, Mike, I hear you're going to retire." And I'd show them and it'd say 348 days till I can ride my bike whenever I want. And so finally, it got down to 0. And it's really been a lot of fun. Ride your bike whenever you want.
Don,
So
I got to ask you. So you and Karen now, your wife Karen, you both been retired on September 1st, about 2 months now. Are you loving it?
Oh, loving it. It's yeah. I can't think of the right words to say. It's kind of that situation where, you've worked your whole life and I always had jobs I enjoyed.
Right.
But it's kind of some days it's like, man, gotta go to work. It's not like, I don't think I'm going to go today. That was never really an option. Now, even if you're self-employed, and I'm kind of
like
thinking
me.
you, Dick, yeah, if you're saying, I think I'll take the day off, but then you go, but that means I make $0
Exactly.
possibly today. And the same thing, when you have a job, you get some days off for vacation, and you can use those as you see fit. But it's pretty much you're accountable to be there and do the work, and that's the way it is. And so you kind of dream of the day where I wonder if I could ever get to the point, and it really comes down to money. Financially,
Right.
Can I get by on a pension, on Social Security? Do I have enough money saved that I can meet my obligations, but not have to worry about earning, a job revenue anymore? And so, yeah, I guess we kind of got there. We hope.
Well, Don, listen, I'm not there yet. I got to work till if I live to 99, I'm going to keep guiding and speaking.
I always remember that commercial. It was on years ago about capital management, financial management, and it was talking about this engineer, and it was an Asian guy named like Frank, and it says Frank hasn't done any planning, all this, and the way he's got it figured, he can retire at age 127, or something, because he was like he was looking at it when he was putting away like the minimum, and
yeah, me and Frank are good friends.
You and Frank could compare notes. But anyway, it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, now we're moving out to the western side of North Carolina.
You are going to love it.
We love the mountains, and we're going to be 2 miles from our daughter, and more importantly, our new granddaughter. And so we'll be able to see her pretty much anytime we want. So it's an exciting time for us. And
I'm so happy for you and Karen.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Well deserved.
Now I gotta ask, how is your knee? You seem in good spirits.
No, it's good.
But that doesn't always tell me, is it getting better?
Last Friday, I went back to my surgeon. They took the stitches out, and that made a big difference. The stitches were rubbing on my pants, on the sheets, on the bed.
Yeah.
So they took those out. It seems to be healing up good. I still have my PICC line in, so I got to feed myself antibiotics every morning. I go back to the infectious disease doctor on the 15th, and the surgeon on the 21st of November, and if everything looks good, I'll be able to get rid of all that stuff and good to go.
Well, for those who might not have known, Dick got, he's had 2 revisions, 2 knee replacements on your right knee, is it?
No, left knee. And I've had
left knee.
4 surgeries for this infection since July.
MRSA, and that's not a good infection. It's a bad bug. And so your body and the antibiotics hopefully are getting ahead of it and will stay ahead of it.
Yes,
and,
I'm still alive, Don.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, anyway, and you're out fishing, and that's the most important thing. It's kind of cool when you think about, what you enjoy in life. And again, hopefully you enjoy the people you have around you, your family and friends and your vocation. We were just talking about that a little bit, about doing something you enjoy and your health.
Right.
You got your health and you got good friends and family that love you. And you got it made. But anyway, we're going to kind of try to get caught up. We had Ron Tab on last week, and that was fun. Ron is an interesting guy. The more I read into his history, pretty amazing athlete.
Right.
And he kind of reminded me a little bit of you, Dick, in that he didn't start running till his junior year of high school.
Just like me.
You did, just like you. Not a stellar high school. He set this school record of 9:56 for 2 miles, which is decent.
Right.
I mean, to break 10 minutes in 2 miles in high school,
yes.
You're a good runner. I mean, it shows some ability, but it's not national class by any stretch.
It's not Prefontaine style.
No, it wasn't. And it was enough to get the. He said he got a little scholarship to go to a Division II school, which he was a couple years ahead of me, so he'd have been in the early 70s, 72, 73, something like that. And breaking 10 minutes then was probably considered you're noteworthy. You earn a scholarship opportunity, that sort of thing. And then his college career was good. I wouldn't say outstanding. I don't think he had any national titles. Like you'd think of these world-class athletes. A lot of them won NCAA titles, and he had 4 All-Americans, and that's commendable. I mean, I never made it once.
Nor did I. I take that back. I did make 2 All-Americans in junior college.
There you go, in the marathon.
Marathon and the 10K.
All right. And so, but then Ron decided to really make the commitment, and I kind of liked his story. A buddy of his, Charlie Gray, they got together and said, let's live together, share expenses, sort of thing. 2 can live as cheap as 1 with rent and groceries and what have you. But then he went after it and started his times really, kept getting better and better. Ultimately ran 2:09. Ended up making a really good career for himself and notable.
Yes.
And then went into coaching. Very commendable that he, took all his knowledge and experience and is now helping other people. What's his name? Meb Kaplewski. He coached him from high school.
Done. You know what? When we were talking, I had no idea that he coached Meb for a bit.
Yeah. Yep.
I always thought it was Bob Larson, his college coach.
He had him in high school and was it sounds like very instrumental in helping him kind of keep that focus, in the right direction and what have you. And so, which, then he went on, had a great career, Ron did. And then unfortunately, kind of like all of us, it sounded like injury. It's kind of like what takes you out of the game.
That'll do it.
That'll do it. It's the unusual athlete that can go through a whole career, have the little, nicks and pains, that maybe everybody's probably going to deal with. But, a lot of times, what is it that causes a guy to have to, I can't compete at that upper level? And he mentioned his 4th Olympic trials. I don't think he ran them. He qualified. Right. But I think he was taken out by injury and just never was able to come back to that level again. And we'll get into the rest of your story because, we ended up with 1982, which was kind of a pivotal year for you and for me both. We both, you had ran your best marathon at Boston that spring and came back and won Grandma's. And then, unfortunately, that Achilles tendon issue popped up in the fall.
Yep.
And
I blew up in New York.
Yeah, blew up in New York and kind of had to take the end of the year was just basically you were injured.
Right.
And laid up for no better way of putting it.
Done.
Yeah,
you started having a heck of a year.
I did. I had 3 grid marathons in 82. I ran those 221s, 3 of them. back to back to back. And so I was pretty excited. I was in graduate school then in the fall of 82. And, to go back to college after you get your bachelor's degree, to get a master's degree, for me, it was night and day difference. I really enjoyed graduate school. I was there because I chose to go.
Right.
The undergraduate stuff is kind of like, yeah, you get out of high school, you're going to go to college. Yeah, I got a little scholarship, sure. What are you going to major in? I don't know. I'm going to major in physical education because I like sports. Mostly I just was there to run.
Well, good for you, but done. Good for you that you went back, got your master's degree. I remember coming out and getting tested in your lab a time or two.
Yeah. Well, because after a couple years out of grad school, I was working at a runner shop. And I loved working at a running shop. If you're a runner, that's like a kid working in a candy store. It's like you get to test all the flavors, of all the shoes and apparel and stuff. And I had a great boss, Neil and Peggy Graff, at that time, and they owned the store. And I worked for them full time, and it was just a blast. And I was running my mind out and working at a running shop. But then it was kind of like the reality is, I was newly married, and we had our first child, Callie, who's now a daughter of her own, which is kind of hard to imagine. And so I kind of started thinking about, the long range plan, the future. And I thought, I need probably more education. And so I went up to SDSU and talked to Coach Scott Underwood, who was my coach, and they offer what they call graduate assistantships. So you actually become like an employee of the university while you're going to college. Now, the benefit is you don't have to pay any tuition.
Nice.
But you're kind of earning your tuition through assistant coaching. And so Scott said, you bet, Mike, I'd be happy to have you as a graduate assistant coach for the cross-country indoor and outdoor track programs. And I'd also have to teach a few of what they call the 100 level 101, Fitness 101. It's for the freshmen. And so as a grad assistant, you would actually teach that class. And sometimes you'd work. I know Dr. Barry McEwen was my advisor. And, it wouldn't be impossible maybe to step in and help out a professor with, scoring exams. Be it filling in doing a lecture if he was unavailable. You might have to take his class for him, things like that. And so you kind of earn your way. And so I remember Karen and I borrowed $6,000. Went to the financial aid office.
Now what was that $6,000 for?
To live on.
Okay.
To live on. I had no savings. I lived hand to mouth. But we needed to. So if I'm going to school full time, what are you going to do for rent?
Right.
What are you going to do for groceries? And so we borrowed, and we kind of calculated it out, and $6,000, and we did.
And that was a lot of money back then.
Oh my gosh, it might as well have been $6 million bucks. But now you look at it and go, what? You were able to go to school for a year on $6,000 grad school, yeah. And so I did, and it was so much fun. We lived in a little apartment, and we had our newborn baby Callie, and she was a hit of there was about 20 of us grad students. And we're all there for the same reason, to get more education, to learn the coaching opportunities we had. And it was a really fun group. It was, when you get to grad school, it's a lot more mature audience. Undergrad, you're still 18, 19, 20. You're still mostly just chasing girls, drinking beer, looking for a good time. Well, not that we ever did, but in grad school, it's a little more, my priorities had changed. And so I really enjoyed it. I really liked going to the classes. Even statistics, which was it's a lot of math in that one. But I was there. My GPA was I got out of undergrad with a B average. Just kind of skating through, not really killing myself. I think I ended up with a 3.94.
Yeah,
I got
mine
like
was
2
like
B's.
1.3.
Anyway, so grad school, for me, I was enjoying the education, the professors, the classwork, and I'm running with the SDSU cross country team all fall. And then going into track that spring, I wish I had a better memory of with the workouts we were doing. We still had that darn hyper center, that D-shaped track.
The square corners?
The square corners. But I think we had learned not to, do killer workouts, none of those 70, 90s again. And I don't think I raced up there once in grad school. I know I didn't. And so I was, maintaining my fitness through the winter, mostly just probably through long runs with the cross country and then with the track team. And then that spring, I was looking for an opportunity, and I was with Brooks at the time, and they had us go down to Gasparilla, and if I remember right, it was early February.
Yeah, the 15K river run.
Yep, 15-kilometer, and it's got a little short for me. I'm kind of a marathoner, but they had the whole Brooks Racing team come in for the Gasparilla and all expenses, and they actually did a few sessions with us on like promoting Brooks apparel and shoes, just how to do media, how to
marketing.
How to make yourself, a little more, visible, available, and that sort of thing at races, and it's just to help promote their product, and in return, that's what they gave us, the product, and that was a lot of fun, and it really kind of builds your confidence to kind of say, well, I don't want to sound arrogant, but like I'm on a professional team now.
Absolutely, you were.
Yeah, and that's huge, to kind of say it's not just a hobby at this point. This is something I've really, committed many years to and a lot of effort. So that was in February, and I remember I ran not real well. I remember Craig Virgin was there. I got to hang out with Rob DiCostella, Greg Meyer, all these guys. The big guys, and they didn't know me from a fly on the wall, but you're in the same room with them and at banquets and in meetings and what have you. And the gun went off, and I tell you, Beards, it's a whole different, and you probably know this better than anybody, it's a whole different ball game.
Oh, yeah.
At that level. I think I went through the 10K in 30:40.
I believe it.
Yeah. And, my PR is like 30.
Right.
I'm almost like
and
a
you
PR
still
pace.
had 5K to go.
And I couldn't even see the front.
Isn't that crazy?
At this point. These guys went out in probably a little over 28 minutes for the 10K, because if I remember right, I think Rob DiCostella might have. I know Greg Meyer set a new American record that day in like the 43s. Rob DiCostella beat him, and I don't know if it was a world record, but it might have been. So these guys, I remember Craig Virgin got 10th, and these guys, they went through 10K way sub 30, all of them. And so when you're at 30, 40, 40 seconds doesn't sound like much. There were probably 40 or 50 guys in there. It was like the peloton in a bicycle race. I was on the tail end of the peloton. I wasn't near the sharp end up at the front.
What did you run that day?
I think I ran right around I died 1,000 deaths in the last 5K, because that 30, 40 just took, you're trying to run that pace the whole way, and I couldn't do it. Beards, it was like in the 48 plus.
Still not bad, though, Mikey.
No, I mean, it wasn't like I embarrassed myself, but at the same time, you kind of I think I was maybe around 50th place in the race, and it wasn't anything to write home and brag about, but yeah, and it was kind of like you at Felmont. They didn't really bring you there to see what you could do. They just wanted to hang out, talk about apparel, get to know you. It was really, they said, it's all good. It's all good. And so I got back home and I was still, I'm pretty fit. So there was I wanted to do a 10K, and I talked to him at Brooks about running Boston, and they said, you bet. Yeah, we'd be happy to have Mike. You want to run Boston? We'll set it up for you. We'll get you a room. Yeah, so the airfare and all that taken care of. So I was thinking, all right, Boston's in April. So in March, I always like to do a 10K before a marathon, because there's something about running a 5K, 10K, that 5-minute pace makes 5:20 pace.
Absolutely.
Feel really good, or hopefully 5:15 pace. If you can do sub 5s in a 10K, 5:15 miles feel like you're just cruising. You're just cruising. And so I was looking for a 10K, and I called up Dave Little in Black Hill State, and I didn't know Dave, the coach there, Dave Little, real well, but I said, hey, I'm interested. You guys doing an outdoor race in March? He goes, you bet, track meet. And I go, you got a 10K? He goes, yeah, we do. And he goes, and Rob Wheelo, who's a really good runner for them at that time, was going to be running it. And I said, well, I'd like to come out there. Can I come out and run as a Brooks athlete, independent? I'm not in college. He goes, yeah, you bet. It's an open meet.
Awesome.
You had to kind of get invited you couldn't just show up that day and expect to jump on the track and run. But if you got the coaches okay, which I did, and he said, you bet, we'd love to have you. So it was in early March, like the first weekend.
So what was the weather like?
Oh, it got canceled. They had a blizzard.
I was going to say, it could be
they had a blizzard.
Or it could be a blizzard.
They had a blizzard about about 3 or 4 days before the race. I was looking at the weather forecast, and they knew it was coming out of Colorado, this huge storm system. And so it was done. Well, it just so happened, I think the same weekend, there was an indoor meet down at the Dome in Vermilion, at the Dakota Dome, which has a beautiful 200-meter indoor track. Anyway, long story short, I entered that and went down there. And the biggest competition I had, I think, in that race was probably Dan Carlson. His nickname, he ran for South Dakota State and was a heck of Digger Carlson. And he went on eventually
he was
to run
good.
29:36. I think he had the school record at SDSU eventually. And so he was there, and I'm thinking, okay, Digger's always competitive. So we took it out, and I got to be honest, I was pretty fit. I had one of my favorite workouts of all time I did right before I went to this meet was 10 times 400, and I actually did it over at that SDSU indoor track. And what's kind of funny was I went over there on a weekend, and the place was deserted. There was nobody in the hyper center, rather a hand, nobody on the track, and I had the whole goddamn thing to myself. And I ran 4 times, I probably averaged like 64, 65,
Dang, that's
66.
good.
All by myself, 1 minute recovery. That was it. And, did it with my racing flats, didn't wear track spikes or anything, just my racing road flats. And I felt good, felt good. And so I went down there, and I was kind of hoping, I thought, well, maybe we'll be around 9 minutes, try to break 9 minutes for 2 miles. Well, anyway, the race took off, and I wasn't going to go to the front. I just thought, well, these guys are young. They'll take it out. We went out in 4:38. I remember it. Yeah, 4:38 for the first mile, which felt really good. I was kind of mentally prepared for like a 4:30, like 68s. And so we're running more like 69s and a few 70s. And I thought, okay, and I'm going to blow my own horn. I went to the front, and I thought, okay, I'm not going to wait for the last 200 meters. I'm going to put the hammer down. And I remember I ran the last mile in 4:35.
Dang,
so I went out in 4:38. I was tickled. And when I got into the last like 2 laps, Digger came up on my back shoulder with like 2 laps to go, and I kept, it's kind of like squeezing the toothpaste out of the tube. You don't want to squeeze it all out too fast. So I kept accelerating the last 2 laps. So by it's kind of like every 100. So with 400 meters to go, every 100 meters I'd run a little faster. So the last 100 meters. I was able to, I won it in like 9:13.
Dang!
And I was
That's
really
way
tickled.
better than I ever did for 2 miles.
Well, yeah, but and what was so fun about it is they had an announcer at this indoor meet, and so I could hear him talking as the race was going on. They were trying to give a splits, and he goes, and he said, Mike Dunlap's who's running for the Brooks Racing Team, and I remember he said one of the best road runners in the Midwest. I'm thinking. That he's talking about me, like that, and that was very motivational, and it really got me going. And so I finished that race. I remember Callie, little baby Callie, and Karen were in the stands, and a great friend of mine, John Nothice. John was a teacher, I believe, over in Yankton, and I know some of our listeners, Jody Chisma will know. She probably had him as a coach or as a friend, and John was just a super, super guy, and he was there. And I remember he came up to me after, hey, Mike, nice job in that 2 mile, and I was just tickled because I knew John when I was in high school.
And you must have been pumped at that point.
Oh, very much so. I was, we drove up to Salem to see Karen's sister after the race, and I was like on cloud 9. So I'm thinking, man, I'm really getting in great shape. And so then we had it was probably a good month before Boston, because Boston is like the 19th.
Right.
I think it was like the 19th, or whatever that date is. And I thought, man, I'd love to get a half marathon in. Because I did a short, fast race, and that went really well. But, man, I'd love to get a half marathon in. And, well, somehow or another, and I'm sure it was through you, I can't imagine any other way, you told me about the Inclement 25K, which is now called the Ron Daws Memorial.
Yeah, 25K, absolutely. I remember that, Mikey.
And is it in
Hopkins, Minnesota? And it's a hilly course.
It is, and it's freaking cold. So Karen and I drive up there for the race that weekend. And I don't remember. I think, Beards, you might have had a speaking engagement, and because Mary was out there. I don't think you were on the course.
I wasn't. Dang it!
Nope. Mary was, and Karen was kind of preoccupied with Callie. Callie's like not even 1 yet because she was born the previous May. But I remember Mary was really a great supporter. She was out there driving around the course, and her and Karen would pop out of the car where I didn't even know when they were going to pop out of a car. And so we took off, and the big guy in the race that day was Barney Klecker.
And Barney at one time
big guy.
held the world record for 50 miles.
Well, Barney was there, and I knew him by reputation. He didn't know me. We'd never met face to face. I just knew who he was. And I was there loaded for bear. I had my racing flats on.
Heck
And
yeah.
I can't remember. It was cold. But we took off, and I think I went right to the front, and I thought, well, let's just go for this. And it was a 2 course, that double loop,
Yep.
if I remember right. Yep. And I had the lead, and I don't have a result sheet, and that's unusual
So
for me. I
did
usually
Barney
keep all
stay
that.
with you right away?
Yeah, he didn't. I kind of, the rumor was that Barney was just there for a training run,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't doubt it. I think if he was competitive, he would have at least hung with
Sure.
me through the first half or whatever.
nobody
I think
came
he
with
just-
you?
No, nope. I took off, and with having Mary and Karen out there in the car, that was really helpful. To keep me rolling, and they kind of let me know how far behind. I think Barney ended up second.
Yeah.
And so at the finish, and I didn't know Bill Winmark at the time, a good friend
Right.
of both of ours, but I think Bill was the host, the race director, if you want to call it that. It was a really loose race. It was more of a, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of a midwinter
Well, kind of ended the
diversion.
winter for that area. Just
Yeah,
to kind
oh
of
my
get you
gosh.
back on the roads
Yeah.
again.
March. It's not that nice
No.
in Minnesota in March, but you never know. You might get a nice day. But it was it was cold. And they had an awards ceremony, and Jan Edel won the ladies division.
Jan.
Yeah, I knew. And Jan was there, and she ran really strong. And then they go, yeah, and in first place for the men's division, Mike Dunlap from Brookings, South Dakota. And because the race is called the Inclement 25K, do you know what they gave me for first
A
prize?
snowball.
No, a bottle of suntan lotion. This huge bottle of suntan lotion. So it's more of a gag. It's a white elephant gift.
that's
It's kind of
funny.
like, so that should tell you how loose
Right.
it was. I mean, it wasn't like I got a trophy, I got $100. No, they gave you that bottle of suntan lotion because it was like such a tongue-in-cheek. This is the last thing you need up here,
Right.
buddy, is to come up here. But anyway, and so that, ended, and so, man, I kind of was on a roll.
So, Don, do you remember what you ran, like, pace-wise?
No. Oh. I wish I did. It was sub 520.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I know
I'm
that.
just going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Was it sub 520?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you're
it was one of
moving.
those where
And that's a
I
hilly
was,
course.
And I had like sweats, and I don't think we had tights in those
No.
days. I think I had nylon, running
Right.
short pants on or something, just because it was too cold to go with bare skin. Well, anyway, so that led up to Boston, and so I'm getting ready to go to Boston. Got my ticket. Brooks has got me.
So,
stayed
Don, you
right
must have
there
been
at
pretty
the,
fired
finish
up
line.
after that race, knowing Boston's like a month
yeah.
away.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I was on a roll, and I was in grad school, and training was going well, and and everything was just going, and it's just one of those things where everything's coming together. And then a good friend of ours, Virgil Cheersma, I don't know how I ran into Virgil, and Virgil said, Mike, I want to go to Boston, and he had actually gone to his local bank in Yankton, and he's asked for help.
Yeah.
You and I have both been in the situation. And he said, I will wear your logo on my racing jersey at Boston, and if any pictures,
Sure.
I'll promote you. And the bank, it's probably his banker. He's a farmer,
Right.
The guy said, yeah, well, we can get you airplane. We'll get you an airplane ticket, which is probably a couple $200-$300. So Virgil, I said, Virgil, you going to Boston? He goes, yeah. And he goes, I'm going to be wearing my bank singlet. They're making me a singlet to wear. And I said, and he goes, but I don't have a place to stay. And I go, well, Virg, I've getting a free room
Right.
from Brooks. Said, you can bunk in with me. I don't mind. And he goes, oh, are you sure? And I go, no, heck. I said, we're right at the finish line. It's right at I think it's a Sheraton.
Oh, yeah,
It's
right
at the
there,
finish
the
line back in
Sheraton.
the old days. Yeah. And he goes, well, Mike, that's fantastic. Oh, yeah, no, we'll meet you out there. We made arrangements. So I flew out there. I don't remember what a day or two before the race. And I'm at the airport. I think I flew from Sioux Falls to Minneapolis to catch a flight to Boston. And who's on the flight but Mike Slack?
Slicker.
And he's slick. And I didn't know him, but I knew him. I recognized him. And I went up and introduced myself. I said, hey, Mike, my name is Mike Dunlap. I said, I'm a really good friend of Dick Beardsley's. He goes, oh, yeah, like I don't know. He recognized your name for sure.
Slicker and I go way back.
Oh, yeah, you guys had dueled at
Right.
that half marathon around Lake Minnetonka there a year before and all that. And he was very cordial, very nice guy. I said, you going out there to run? Nah, he said, New Balance is having me come out for the weekend. he'll probably stand in the booth,
Right.
at the expo. They bring in these athletes, and Mike was that good at. He ran against the Russians at the dual meet.
The guy could
in the mile.
I mean, the guy could run a sub 4 mile,
sub 4,
and
a 2:11.
do well at the distances.
Yeah, I think he ended up like a 2:11 marathon eventually. But anyway, so I had a nice chat with him, and so we get out there, and come to find out, Brooks had already bunked me in with another Brooks athlete.
No.
Yeah. So we had 2 double beds. Me in one, and the other Brooks athlete had the other one.
You and Virgil sleep together?
It gets better. Yeah. And so I get there and I meet this guy, and I think his name was Ray. I wish I remembered, but he was running for Brooks, kind of like me.
Yeah.
It's like a 2:20 marathoner, and they were bringing him in to give him a chance to run Boston. And I said, hey, I hope you don't mind, but I invited a buddy to stay with me. And he goes, that's so funny because I invited a buddy to stay with me. He goes,
you were quadruple bunked together.
We were four of us. So the 2 Brooks guys thinking, well, I got a room. Come stay with me. we both had a room together, and we both invited. So there were 4 of us in one room. And I got to be honest with you, Virgil is he's a good guy. I didn't have a problem sleeping in the same bed with Virgil. I wasn't worried about any. We weren't homophobic in those days, or whatever the word is. And so, we got there, and I kind of told Virgil, I said, I'm not going to go to the expo. I'm here to race.
Right.
I'm not going to walk around on my feet. And he said, yeah, me neither.
That's the worst thing you can do.
Oh, yeah. But here's the cool thing. Brooks, up until this point, they didn't have a racing shoe. Except for Greg Meyer, they built him a shoe from the ground up. And for the rest of us, they were hoping to have the racing shoe out by Boston. And guess when they got it, Dick? The day before the race.
I didn't know
What's the
this.
one thing you never should do? Wear a new pair of shoes in a marathon.
So what'd you do?
'Cause you've told, they gave them to me the day before the race. And I put them on, and I wore them the whole day. I never took those.
Kind of break them in a little bit.
Oh, I'm trying to break, just making sure there's no seams, there's no tight, pinching on the toes. And I think I might have went out the day before Boston in those shoes and ran like 2 miles. Just just
shake.
Probably shake. Yeah, just kind of for the nerves mostly. Plus, I was really trying to break the shoes in, and they seem fine. They're lightweight racing shoes. So we get up. And as you know, if you're staying at the finish line, you got to get 26 miles down the road to the starting line. And they have buses and beers. I'm not exaggerating. This is 1983. There had to be 50. There's probably more than 50. They had rented every school bus, every rental in the city or surrounding area. And every athlete gets on a bus unless you have a private ride. And the road isn't that big. If you had, 8,000 cars driving up to Hopkinton. Anyway, so you get on the bus. You have to ticket. So when you get your race number, and I was race number 102, and if I remember right, your number relates to your qualifying time.
Sure.
Because as you know, you have to qualify to get into Boston, even back in those days. And so I guess my qualifying time would have been 2:21:08. I think I ran at Duluth at Grambling.
Yeah.
And so they used that. And so I guess I was the 102nd fastest guy lining up that day. Virgil had qualified, I can't remember, I don't remember what race he did, but he had a number 2 that was under, here's the key, it was like in the 120s.
Yeah.
If your number's below 125, when you get to the starting line, they have corrals. And the first number 1, which I'm guessing that day was probably Bill Rogers, because he was returning. You weren't there, Salazar wasn't there.
Maybe Meyer.
Who got third? Ludwig wasn't there. Meyer was there. Meyer had number 1. Now that I'm thinking of it. I think I remember the shots. But anyway, if you have numbers 1 through 125, you get in the front corral. But before you get there, you got to ride this darn bus. And so you get outside at this loading zone, and you got your ticket in your hand, and you also have like a little gym bag. You can bring like some warm-ups and what have you. And you can try to find that, I guess, at the finish line. Well, Virgil and I had talked it over, and I said, look, Virgil, I'm going to wear this ratty old long-sleeve turtleneck I got, and I might have had a hat. I said, when I get up there, and they have barrels for you to throw clothing in, and they give it to homeless people, I guess.
They do.
They don't just burn it or anything. But if you don't want it back, you just throw it in one of these big barrels. And so I said, that's what I'm going to do. And he goes, yeah, I don't want to hassle with worried
No.
about finding my duffel bag because we can just walk from the finish back to our hotel. And he goes, yeah, I'm going to do that too. So we get on the bus and we're sitting there and we get towards the back of the bus and we're sitting together like two school kids ready to go off to school. And who should get on the bus but George Sheehan? Now, for the listeners, I know you know who George Sheehan
I was on
is.
the stage with him a number of times.
Oh, he is a heck of a guy. And I only knew him by reputation. I heard him speak at Brookings. He was brought in on a lecture series. Remember, they paid him $6,000.
Oh, that was a lot. He was the highest paid running speaker for years.
He was a cardiologist by trade. He was a runner as a high school and college guy. He kind of gave up running then to go to med school and become a well-known cardiologist. And then in the early to mid-40s, he rekindled his love for running. And I haven't bought his book about that. I think there's a book called Running with the Eagle or something like that. One of his sons wrote it. But he got back into running, and he set an age group world record for the mile, like 4:49 at age 40-something indoors. And so he was passionate about his running. And I've read a lot of, he's got several books published. He's got video series. I have one of his videos. I purchased it, and I love listening to it. And his whole thing was really, he said, between ages of like 20 to 45, when he went to med school, he said, I really have hardly any memory. It's kind of a blur. He wasn't living, he didn't feel his best self. His whole, he talks about mind, body, spirit. He was working on his mind. That's all cardiology. He was an expert at looking at 12 lead EKGs. I don't know if you ever looked at one of those, all these little squiggly lines. And he can look at that thing and tell you what's wrong with your heart.
Dang.
If there was something wrong with it. I mean, he had developed that skill and knowledge. And that's basically all he did all day long, he said, is read 12 lead EKGs of patients from who knows where. And then he rekindled his love for running, and he became known as a running philosopher.
Oh, he probably made as much money or more doing that as he did as a doctor.
Cardiology. Yeah, he was a very successful man. Very, he always said, everybody that ever met him or heard him speak, oh, man, you must be so well read. And he said, no, I don't read that much. I only read several people very well. He loved William James. He loved Thoreau and Emerson.
Yeah.
He had certain writers, thinkers, that he would just absorb all of their works and kind of reformat it in his own mind. And he wrote an article for Runner's World for, you tell me how many years.
Oh, a monthly column.
Forever.
And then he had how many books?
Oh, numerous. If you ever get a hold of a George Sheehan book,
Read it.
Personal Best is one of his last ones. Yeah, they're worth the read. I've got a couple. I'll always hang on to them. Anyway, he's on the bus. And so he sits down about 2 or 3 seats in front of Virgil and I. And everybody's, hey, Dr. Sheehan, good luck today. Hey, have a good one, Dr. Sheehan. Everybody's, they all know we have a celebrity with us. And he had been at Brookings in 1981 or 2 and given this lecture. I drove up with a bunch of people. We wanted to go hear him speak. And I just remember he sat on a stage and he had running shoes on and blue jeans and no socks. He had socks on. Yeah, he just, I don't know if he forgot to pack them or he just liked the, back in the day I used to run, I remember a few summers without socks and man, your shoes would be so ratty and stinky and stuff. But anyway, long story, finally I have an opportunity to chat him up a little. Me, I can't not sit and not talk to somebody. And so after it's 26-mile bus ride.
It seems like it takes you forever.
Oh, ever. You can't imagine running that far. And it's kind of sad to drive the course the morning of the race. It's like, don't do that. Well, we're doing it, and we're distracting ourselves. Virgil and I had been chatting, and there's runners. Everybody's excited. You can smell it in the air, the adrenaline. And finally, hey, Dr. Sheehan, and he turns and looks at me. He goes, I said, hey, when are you going to come back to South Dakota? I'm trying to think of a glib little comment to kind of say, oh yeah, I was there just last year at Brookings, South Dakota.
Please don't tell me he said, no, South Dakota.
Oh, he goes. South Dakota. Are there runners in South Dakota?
Oh, come on!
And everybody, and Virgil and I go, well, there's 2 of us, and everybody on the bus is kind of snickering, well, he kind of put those guys in their place. And I remember, and so I didn't say anything more, and Virgil kind of, under his breath, he goes, that son of a, did he just diss us?
He did!
And I go, yeah, basically, he kind of made it sound like, what, South Dakota? What's in South Dakota? And I tell you, you'll take whatever you can before a race for motivation.
Oh, for sure.
And I think Virgil and we didn't even say anything to each other.
Probably fired you
I
up.
think in the back, in the back of my mind is like, heck yeah, I'm going to show you the kind of runners we have in South Dakota. And so, we get off the bus, and Beards, you probably know this better than any, maybe you didn't. They dump you out there about an hour and a half before the darn race starts. And there's a high school with a gymnasium. And well, the year I ran, there were like 8,300 runners.
Don,
Well, I think 8,000.
okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, I had to ride up in the back of a station wagon. There was no school to go in.
You went to
a year later for you guys. Let me tell you.
No, but let me tell you, you couldn't even get in the gymnasium. It was packed.
I bet.
It was an overcast, and as you know, perfect day for running. Kind of cloudy. It was kind of cool in the morning, like probably in the lower 50s. It didn't get much above 50s.
No.
I don't think it got out of the 50s that day. And it's kind of like a mist, not raining, but not comfortable. And so Virgil and I are hanging out, and we're going like, well, let's see if we can get into the gym and get out of the weather.
Yeah.
And we couldn't. You go in there, and it was like so oppressive.
Sardines
so
in a can.
Oh, it was like, exactly. And so we kind of decided there's woods everywhere. And the runners are just kind of milling around, walking around. So we're just kind of milling around, trying to find a dry spot to sit, get off your feet. Well, as you know, Beards, you get the urge, the stomach. We got up. You have enough time for your GI system to kind of do its thing. And now the nerves are kicking in. You've been drinking water like crazy all morning. But not, taking a whiz is one thing, but having to take a dump. And the porta potties, they had plenty of them, but with 8,000 runners, the line, it was crazy. So, a lot of us had, I always carried some tissues with me, or I hate to say toilet paper, but you never know. When you're out for a run, it's pretty handy to have some toilet paper
I just
with
wipe
you.
my
I
hand.
had some
You know what? I don't even take toilet paper anymore. I just wipe my hand later.
We're not even going into that one. But here was the thing. I headed off into the woods. Everybody was in. You were kind of trying to find a private place. There was no private place in the woods. Everybody was probably 50 yards apart, but you could kind of look over. You'd be squatting behind a tree.
Those
You'd look
trees
over.
probably
There's a
grew
guy.
a foot and a half that year.
Now listen, the worst part of this, as you walk back into the woods, you'd see these little white piles of the toilet paper on top of the deposit.
Right.
So they're like landmines. So as you're walking through the woods, you're kind of looking where you don't want to step in this stuff.
No.
It's funny now. It's so funny. And so finally you get back in the woods far enough, and you're still seeing more white toilet paper piles. And you finally find a spot. And there were men, there were women back there. We're all runners. Nobody cared. Nobody was trying to, be a pervert or whatever it was. And you got your business done. You left your little sample of white tissue paper there as your flag of don't step here, and headed back into the meadow, back to the area. Well, finally we got to the starting line, and it was really kind of cool. And they had a guy there. I'd call him the bouncer. You weren't going to get in that corral without showing your number.
Oh, I bet not.
Yeah, because I'm sure there are guys that, Beards, you've been to a race where it's like you get there late and you're gonna squeeze your way up to the front because you're just like, well, I'm not gonna start behind these slower people because it's gonna spend a ton of energy. Plus, I want my time to be from the starting line, not from 150 yards behind the starting line. I don't think we didn't.
There was no chip timing back then.
We didn't have chip timing then. So that guy was looking at your number, and he'd give you the thumbs up, the nod, and you'd stroll into the front corral, Virgil and I. And you're rubbing elbows with all these guys, all the big names.
The best.
It is. Now, I didn't get in the front row because I thought, now, I don't need to do that. I got number 102. I should be in the last 20 runners of this bunch. So, we got in there, and it seems like forever. And finally, they shoot the gun, and Beards, we can do this slow or fast. But that first mile, you talk about, it's like you're getting shot out of a gun. Is. And I don't know, it's the adrenaline, it's the downhill, it's the fear.
I think it's a combination of everything.
And I just know I was trying to kind of keep it under control, and I went through the first mile in 5 flat. Now, I know you went through in like 4:29, something like that.
Me and Salazar a year earlier. But again, Don, between the downhill, you're so fired up, the crowds, it's just, it doesn't feel that fast.
Oh, it doesn't. And Joan Benoit was ahead of me. I remember that because it's like, holy shit! I thought I was going fast. She's going out at 5-minute pace. Well, then and what's kind of cool is Virgil and I, we were standing next to her when the gun went off. But I don't know what happened. You can't really run next to somebody until you get maybe down the road a ways. And we did. We reconnected. Our pace was pretty much the same. Maybe he was on the left hand side of the road when I was on the right hand side of the road. But eventually, it thinned out enough that we found each other.
Now, Don,
which
did
was
you and
good.
Virgil make a pact that we're going to try to run together or not?
Yeah. I said, Virgil, we're trying to break 219.
Yeah.
And he goes, exactly, 219.04, I think we had to do. And I said, well, let's work together. And he goes, oh, dang right. Well, let's anything to help one another achieve our goal. And so we were rolling along. And at about 10 miles, we actually came up behind Joan Benoit. She was ahead of us the whole way.
Did you know it was her when you were behind her?
Oh, yeah. Well, she's so recognizable.
Well, they probably had a police escort or something.
Yes, she did. She had a motorcycle in front of her with a camera, and she had her athletics vest outfit. She's a little pipsqueak, but she's got that short black hair, and her running style is pretty distinct.
Right.
And yeah, there's no doubt there. Hey, there's Joan Benoit. And now this is going to sound very sexist, and I hope it doesn't. I don't know what the word is anymore, but male chauvinist, I guess. But I'm running with Virgil, and she's about 50 yards in front of us with this motorcycle camera facing her, the cameraman facing her, filming her. And I told Virgil, Virgil, somebody at home's going to see this someday and say, those two turkeys are running with the women. They don't realize how good she is.
I mean, she'd run like she sets.
Oh, well, she was 224, I think, going into that race from maybe Chicago or something like that. Anyway, I said they'll think we're just back here, kind of loafing our way through the Boston Marathon. I go, look, we have, and this sounds terrible. I go, let's either drop back out a camera shot or should we pass?
Right.
Her? And Virgil didn't hesitate. He goes, pass her.
Yeah.
And I said, all right. So we kind of, picked up our cadence a little bit. And when they're, it wasn't like we sprinted, but we were able to get in front of her. And as we're running along, we finally got to the half marathon point, 13 miles. And I know Virgil and I were right at 1:04 because they had a clock
at the half marathon.
Yes,
1:04
at 1:08. It's 1:08.
Okay,
1:08 because the winner Meyer went through in 1:04 flat, and they had a timer that said how many. It said 4 minutes. So when Greg Meyer went by the half marathon and Benji Durden and whoever, Ron Tab, whoever the group was, they started this timer. So as you got there, you'd see how far behind the lead group is. Yeah, and it was exactly 4 minutes. And we were at 1:08 flat. And I told Virgil, I go, God, those guys are going out at 1:04. They're on 2:08 marathon pace. And we're on 2:16 marathon pace. And it's like, wow, but it's, Beards, do I need to tell anybody what the first 13.1 miles of Boston's like?
Oh, yeah.
Pretty sweet. It is sweet.
It is.
Is that Wesley Women's College?
Wellesley.
Before Wesley? Is that before the halfway? Wellesley.
At the halfway where all the gals come up from the college and just go crazy.
Virgil said he was, all these co-eds come out and they have a reputation of being a little, what's the word, randy?
Oh, they want to kiss you, hug you.
They do. Supposedly, guys would throw their motel keys.
Oh, yeah.
If the girls they'll grab them and then
hookups guess, later in the day.
Yeah, I guess so. But the girls, anyway, they're cheering like crazy. But guess who they're really going to, when Virgil and I go by, it's deafening. But then Joan Benoit goes by and guess what you hear? It doubles.
I bet.
The decibel level doubles. And Virgil and I look at each other. I'm getting chills just thinking about it. And I go, shit, Virgil. She's right behind us. Because we went through in 1:08. She went through in 1:08.23.
Unreal.
She was 23 seconds behind us. And you could hear the roar of the crowd. And I always said it scared me all the way to the finish.
I bet.
I think, Joe. But anyway, so we're rolling. And we're doing good. And we get to about 14, 15. And I remember John Hogan. He was a Minneapolis, a Mankato kid. John was a good kid, yep. And he and I had raced together at Twin Cities. I beat him by a couple seconds the year that's fall. And John came flying by us. I mean, he was rolling.
Yeah.
And I remember Virgil, and I'm sounding like I'm such a expert at this, but Virgil goes, hey, Mike, should we go with him? And I said, Virg, we just went through the half in 1:08. We're running 2:16 pace. I think we should just stay right. Let's keep the same effort. Because, I'm kind of thinking, let's not get greedy. Because if we pick up the pace to, faster, we're not even
and
we're just past
Boston
halfway
course
point.
can nail you.
I was worried about the hills coming up from 17 to 21 miles. So, and Virgil goes, okay. And I was older than him, so I think he deferred to wisdom or whatever. No, I don't know. But we didn't pick up. We just kept going. We were rolling, and we finally got to the hills, Beards. And I'm going to be 100% honest. We got to that last hill, Killer Hill or Heartbreak Hill, I guess it's called, between 21 miles.
Heartbreak Hill.
It was breaking my heart. I could not hang with Virgil. I was, you're at that threshold.
Right.
And Virgil was slowly gaining on me or pulling away from me. And I wasn't going to go faster. It's like, Virgil's getting ahead of me. I have to speed up. There was no more speeding up. It was like I was at my point where it's like, I can't go faster. Otherwise,
that's a
brutal
part of the course.
It is. And it was heartbreaking for me to let Virgil go because we're good buddies and competitors.
Right.
I wanted to be the first South Dakota finisher, but that's okay. I was happy for him, sad for me, and I was doing the math in my head the whole way, and I swear I ran a 5:56. I did from 20 to 21. It's the hills in
and
there.
And basically, Heartbreak's pretty near a mile long.
It was just a 5:56. I did the math in my head as I was running, and got to the 21 mile mark, and I remember Coach Squires when you and Salazar, he goes. Pretty much the same point. He goes, they just ran 5:02 up Heartbreak Hill.
Yeah.
And I kind of remembered that. Beards ran up this thing at 5:02. I'm running up in 5:56, and it's hurting, man. It's killing me. And so, I think we had a comment from one of our listeners that, and I don't know if Ben sent that to you.
He did. I'll get back to him, too.
Yeah, we'll talk about that at the end. So I get to the top of Heartbreak Hill, and Virgil, I can't see him. As you kind of go over, you crest,
right.
And there was some nice downhill on the other side. And it was one of those points, and I actually have a photo, which is really amazing. The spectators of Boston are one of a kind. A guy took a picture of me and sent it to me a couple weeks after the race. It's me coming over the top of Heartbreak Hill all by myself, and I had a Brooks hat on, like I did at Grandma's.
Sure.
Brooks gave us all those painter's hats that you made famous the year before. And so I was wearing my painter's hat, which I really didn't need at this point because it was not a sunny, hot day. It was a cool, cloudy day. And I got to the top of Heartbreak Hill, and I think they were handing out sponges, and I grabbed one, and I took my hat off, and I remember I kind of just squeezed the sponge on my forehead to kind of let the water run down. It felt good. And Beards, as I looked at the crowd, because the crowd at the top of Heartbreak Hill is just huge. I swear every eye was looking at me. Now, you might have thought, you're just your ego's so full of yourself. And I go, yeah. And I just thought they're all staring at me like, what's this? Oh, they probably were because this poor guy probably looked so bad. And Beards, I kid you not, I took my painter's hat and I just flung it. I flung it into the crowd.
You did?
And the people, I did. And the people went nuts. They were like, yeah. It was like Kip Kano used to do that, throw his hat when he was going to start his kick. So I threw the hat into the crowd and just took off down the other side. And I kind of got my stride back. I started feeling a little better. And all at once up ahead, I spotted Virgil.
No!
He had this singlet on that the bank had given him. And the logo on it was so tiny, right in the center of his chest. It said like First Bank of Yankton on it or something like this. But I saw it from behind, I reckon. And Virgil's like 6'4" and blonde-haired.
Could you tell, was he starting to hurt?
No. He was still just rolling like always. And I was closing the gap.
Yeah, I was going to say, you were picking it up, though.
Oh, I was. And I got my second wind. The adrenaline, I don't know what it was, but I just started feeling better. And it's kind of like maybe that's a lesson. You're going to have bad points in every race. Yep. And you got to just kind of learn to ride it out.
Absolutely.
Maybe you do back off a notch or two, like that 5:56, but I had to. And then to give yourself a chance
get it
to
back
take a breath.
again.
And I got it back. And I kid you not, I snuck up onto Virgil about 22 to 23 miles. I don't have the exact. And I got right next to him. I go, Virgil, I'm back.
He probably
like that. He goes, Mike. He was like, he was happy.
Yeah,
he was like probably feeling like, oh shit, I wonder what happened to Mike. So I go, oh man, and so we're just rolling. And now, Beards, as you know, the last 3 miles, the crowd, even though I think that we had better crowd control than you did, the crowd is wide enough for two guys basically to run side by side. And the noise is deafening, and it, like you said, I didn't feel my legs.
No, your ears are ringing. It's that
they
loud.
Are. And I finally got to the sit-go sign, and I think you told me, and I've heard if you get to the sit-go sign,
1 mile to go, baby.
1 mile to go. And Beards, I looked at my watch, and I looked at, there's a sit-go sign, and it's like, and I looked at my watch, and I knew, man, we're going to be close to 2:19. And I turned to Virgil. I said, Virgil, we gotta go. Like, this is the last mile, but...
And you know what? When you're shooting for a particular time and you think, I got to push it this last mile,
I gotta.
in a marathon, that's not a good feeling.
It hurts. But we did it. And I took off, and I got to admit, Virgil, you know, when I took off, it was every man for himself at that point. And I ran that last mile as fast. I haven't figured out the split ever. But I rounded the last corner, and you know it's that old course, 200 meters of...
Oh, yeah, you take a left on Ring Road off of Hereford Street.
Yeah, you watch the Duel in the Sun. You can see what that last 200 meters looks like. Dick and Alberto will show you. And I saw the clock up ahead, and there was nobody in front of me to catch. Like, I'm going to try to catch that guy. And it was just like turning over 2:18. And, or, you know, it was just... And I thought, okay, I've got 1 minute to run from here... And I could see the dang finish line to there. So are you like
sprinting at this point?
Oh, heck yes. I'm going as fast as my little legs will carry me. But I thought, unless I fall on my face, how can I not run this last stretch?
Now, where's Virgil at this point? Behind you?
I don't know. Yeah, I know he's not in front of me. So I crossed the finish line, and I've got I think I put the picture on. I'll put it up sometime of me cross. It's the proof they send you after the race to buy. I never did buy it.
What was your time?
2:18:26.
Awesome.
And I no sooner crossed the finish line and came to a stop, and I spun around. I am not making this up. And I was staring up the road for Virgil. I was, you know, because we were a team that day. We really were a team. And I saw him coming. He's coming down the hill. And I'm looking at the clock, and it's like 2:18:35. And I'm looking at Virgil. I'm looking at the clock. I'm looking at Virgil. I'm looking at the clock. And I think he ran 2:18:49.
So he broke 2:18 also.
And I don't think I got 69th place. He got 74th place. I mean, it was the deepest, fastest field ever. Because it was, and we didn't know that at the time. So there was a couple guys that got in between us. But as soon as we got to this sounds kind of goofy. We embraced, gave each other a big hug.
Oh, I would too.
And Bears, we were both crying like little babies.
I would have been crying too.
Oh, it was such an emotional release. And, you know, we were, and it kind of gets me right now. Because, I don't know, when you set a goal and you work your tail off, and we did it.
And you made it.
And we did it together. And we did it together. And I tell you, we floated back to the Sheraton.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
You know, when you finish a marathon on a cold, cloudy day, you start showing off immediately. And we just said, I said, Verge, let's head back. And he goes, yeah, I'm cold. I'm freezing. And as we were like some of the first runners back into the Sheraton. And we're just coming in with our racing shorts and singlets on. That's it. And we're walking through the lobby, and everybody looks like they're dressed to the nines. You know, they got suits and dresses.
For sure.
You know, the people that are there not for the race necessarily. And as we're walking through, people are going, hey, you guys just ran the marathon? They go, how'd you do? And we both go, we just qualified for that 1984 Olympic trials. And people are like, oh my God. You know, we got on the elevator with people.
Done. Many guys and gals that want to do that have never done that. And it's you know, they say it's less than 2% of the people in the world have ever run a marathon. But it's probably less than a half of a percent that ever qualified for the U.S. Olympic trials.
Well, we got back. We felt no pain.
I bet not.
Usually after a marathon, you're like, oh, everything's going to hurt. No. And I told Virgil, I go, you take the first shower. And he goes, oh, okay, you bet. Well, I got on the phone and started calling Karen, and she was down at her mom and dad's in Spencer, Iowa. And they were trying to watch it on TV. I think their ABC had some coverage.
Sure.
And they claimed they think they saw me or something. So I had to tell them what we did. And then... I'm trying to remember who it was from KSFYT radio, KSOO, I think it was, KSOO. And they had said, they knew Virgil and I were going, and they said, when you guys get done, would you call us and let us know how you did? Oh, frick. I'm dialing that number, and I'm talking, and the guy goes, hang on a second. And he hits record, and so he's recording. I think I have this on cassette tape somewhere. So he's asking me, so Mike, tell me, how did you and Virgil do at the Boston Marathon today? Oh, my God, I'm talking a mile a minute.
Saying God, that's qualified. A big deal.
I tell you, we were just on cloud nine. And so he gets out of the shower. He gets on the phone, calls his mom and dad. I think, I don't think he was married at that time. I'm not sure, his girlfriend or his wife. So we finally are all showered up. We're hungry. We head out. You know, it's been an hour or 2 hours now. And we're heading downtown, and all the runners are milling around. And it was just, The atmosphere of Boston's unreal. It's on like
there
anything.
is not another race like it.
We tried to get into the Elliott Lounge. You couldn't get near the
bet.
Elliott Lounge then. Now, maybe if your name was Dick Beardsley or Bill Rogers, you'd have got it. Beards, I tell you what, I think that's enough for tonight.
Oh, done. Listen,
I'm exhausted.
You got me so jacked up right now. I want to go out for a run. Honest to gosh.
Well, I hope everybody else finds something out of that they enjoyed.
Oh, this was awesome, Dunn, and we want to thank everybody for listening. And if you have any questions for Dunn and myself or comments about our show, please contact us directly at our website, beardsanddunpod.com, or leave us a comment on our Facebook, Instagram, or X, all at Beards and Dunn Pod.
Yeah, and if you're watching on YouTube, we'd love to have you hit that subscribe, leave us a comment. And yeah, we'll get to some of the comments here in the next few weeks because we enjoy when people ask questions, and we're more than happy to answer them, even though they might not make
And you
a lot
can
of
ask
sense.
us anything.
There you go.
Mikey, we'll see you
have
next
a great
week,
time
buddy.
fishing. All right, take care, bud.
Bye-bye.
Stay in the boat. All right.